Welcome, friends. Today we're diving into a topic that could change the way you view life. Have you ever had one of those moments where you just stop, look up, and whisper, God, how am I supposed to do this? Maybe you're staring at a mountain that feels too big to climb. Maybe it's the weight of responsibilities pressing down on you. Maybe life just keeps throwing punches, and no matter how much you pray, no matter how much you try, it feels like nothing is changing. You wake up every day carrying the same worries, the same uncertainty. You've done everything you can, but the answers just aren't coming. You've asked for direction, but the path ahead is still unclear. It's like you're walking through a thick fog, reaching out for something, anything that makes sense, but all you get is silence. And that silence, it's heavy. It makes you wonder if God is even listening at all. Maybe you've been working so hard for something, pouring your heart and soul into it, but doors keep slamming shut. You've prayed for healing, for a breakthrough, for a sign, but instead you're met with delay, disappointment, or confusion. You start questioning everything. Did I miss something? Did I take a wrong turn? Am I not praying the right way? You see other people moving forward, doors opening for them, and you can't help but think, why not me? What am I doing wrong? And the worst part? The waiting, the not knowing, the feeling of being stuck between where you are and where you desperately want to be. It's frustrating, it's exhausting, and if you're honest, it's starting to shake your faith. But what if I told you God isn't ignoring you? What if He's answering in a way you don't expect? You pray, but nothing changes. You try, but doors keep shutting. You feel stuck, lost, alone. It's a feeling that's hard to explain, but if you've been there, you know exactly what it's like. It's waking up every morning with a weight on your chest, feeling like you're carrying the world on your shoulders. It's looking around and seeing people moving forward, making progress, while you feel like you're standing still. You start your day with hope, thinking maybe today will be different, but by the time night comes, you're back to where you started, tired, frustrated, wondering if things will ever change. You've done everything you know how to do. You've prayed, you've worked, you've believed. But instead of open doors, you keep running into walls. Instead of clear answers, all you get is confusion. You're trying to hold on to faith, but with every setback, every delay, every disappointment, doubt creeps in. God, do you see me? Do you hear me? Do you care? Maybe it's a dream you've been chasing for years, something you felt deep in your heart was meant for you. You started out excited, confident that God was leading you in this direction, but then the obstacles came, rejections, failures, delays. And now you're not even sure if you're on the right path anymore. You've poured your time, your energy, your prayers into it, but nothing is working the way you thought it would. Or maybe it's financial stress weighing you down. Bills keep piling up. No matter how hard you work, it never seems to be enough. You're trying to stay afloat, but every month feels like a battle. You're exhausted, not just physically, but emotionally. And every time you pray for a breakthrough, it feels like the answer is just silence. And then there's the pain of broken relationships. People you trusted, people you thought would always be there, suddenly walking away. Maybe it was betrayal, maybe it was distance, maybe it was life pulling you apart in ways you never expected. But whatever the reason, it left a hole in your heart. You miss them. You replay the memories. You wonder if things could have been different. You ask God why it had to happen this way, or maybe it's just the weight of life itself, the pressure, the expectations, the fear of failure. You keep showing up, trying to be strong, trying to hold everything together, but inside, you're tired. You're carrying burdens no one else can see. You smile, but deep down you feel empty. You go through the motions, but nothing truly feels right. And then there's the spiritual struggle, the quiet war inside your soul. You used to feel close to God. You used to believe He was guiding you, but lately He feels distant. You try to pray, but the words don't come. You open your Bible, but it doesn't speak to you the way it used to. You wonder if you're doing something wrong, if you're not good enough, if God has forgotten you. You hear people say, just trust God, just have faith, and you want to. But how do you trust when nothing makes sense? How do you keep believing when you feel like you've been waiting forever? It's hard. It's really hard, because the truth is we don't always get the answers we want. We don't always see the full picture. And in those moments of silence, in those seasons of waiting, the doubts get louder. The enemy whispers lies. You're not enough. You're alone. God isn't listening. And maybe you've started to believe it. Maybe you've started to think, what's the point? Why keep trying? Why keep praying if nothing changes? But what if the silence doesn't mean God is ignoring you? What if He's answering in a way you don't expect? You pray, but nothing changes. You try, but doors keep shutting. You feel stuck, lost, alone. It's exhausting, isn't it? Waking up every day carrying the same weight, the same problems, the same unanswered questions. You try to push forward, to stay strong, to believe that things will get better, but deep down, there's this sinking feeling, this quiet, nagging doubt that maybe they won't. Maybe you'll always feel this way. Maybe this is just how life is going to be. You've done everything you know how to do. You've asked God for guidance. You've tried to make the right decisions. You've done your best to be patient, to trust, to keep moving forward. But it's like walking through a maze with no exit. Every time you think you've found a way out, you hit another dead end. Every time you think you're making progress, something pulls you back. And you wonder, what am I supposed to do? Where am I supposed to go from here? Maybe you had a dream, a vision of what your life was supposed to look like. You worked for it, prayed for it, believed in it with everything you had, but now it feels like that dream is slipping through your fingers. Maybe it's because of circumstances beyond your control. Maybe it's because no matter how hard you try, the doors just won't open. You see other people moving forward, living the life you once imagined for yourself, and you can't help but wonder, why not me? What did I do wrong? Or maybe it's the weight of financial stress that keeps you up at night. No matter how much you work, no matter how much you budget, it never seems to be enough. Bills pile up, unexpected expenses keep coming, and you're trying, really trying, to keep it all together. But some days it feels impossible. Some days you just want to break down and cry because the pressure is too much. You've asked God for help, you've prayed for provision, but instead of a miracle, all you hear is silence. Then there's the pain of broken relationships. The people you trusted, the ones you thought would always be there, suddenly aren't. Maybe it was betrayal, maybe it was a slow drifting apart, maybe it was something you never saw coming, but whatever it was, it left you feeling empty. You replay the conversations in your head, trying to understand what went wrong. You wonder if you could have done something different. You wonder why God allowed this to happen. Because the truth is, nothing hurts more than feeling abandoned, especially by the people who once meant everything to you. And then there's the quiet battle inside your own mind, the doubt, the fear, the feeling of being completely lost. You used to feel close to God. You used to believe He was guiding you, but now He feels distant. You try to pray, but it feels empty. You try to read His Word, but it doesn't speak to you the way it used to. You want to believe He's still with you, but it's hard when you can't feel Him. It's hard when you're surrounded by questions with no answers. People tell you to just have faith, to just trust God, to just be patient. And maybe at one point those words encouraged you, but now they just sound like empty advice. Because how do you trust when nothing makes sense? How do you believe when all you've known for so long is disappointment? How do you keep going when you don't even know which way to turn? You see, there's a kind of exhaustion that doesn't come from lack of sleep. It's the exhaustion of constantly trying, constantly believing, constantly waiting for something to change. It's the exhaustion of watching time pass while your situation stays the same. It's the exhaustion of pretending to be okay when deep down you're not. And the hardest part, feeling like you have to go through it alone. Feeling like no one truly understands. Feeling like if you opened up about how you really feel, people would just tell you to pray harder, to have more faith, as if you haven't already done that 1,000 times. Maybe you've started to wonder if something is wrong with you, if you're the problem, if you're not strong enough, not good enough, not faithful enough. Maybe you've started to think that God is answering everyone else's prayers except yours, that somehow you got overlooked. And when those thoughts come, when the doubt gets louder than the faith, it's easy to shut down, to stop praying, to stop trying, to stop believing that anything will ever change, because what's the point? If God was going to fix it, wouldn't He have done it by now? If He was really with you, wouldn't you feel His presence? And so you carry the weight alone. You go through the motion. You smile when people ask if you're okay. You tell yourself to be strong, but inside, you're tired. You're tired of waiting. You're tired of hoping. You're tired of feeling like you're wandering in the dark with no direction, no answers, and no way out. But what if the silence doesn't mean God is ignoring you? What if He's answering in a way you don't expect? What if this delay isn't a punishment, but preparation? What if God isn't saying no, but not yet? It's hard to see it that way when you're in the middle of the storm, when nothing is going right, when everything feels stuck. But what if what feels like a setback is actually a setup? What if God is working behind the scenes, moving things into place, shaping you, refining you, preparing you for something greater than you can even imagine? Think about Moses. He was chosen by God to lead the Israelites out of Egypt, but before he ever stood before Pharaoh, before he ever parted the Red Sea, he spent 40 years in the wilderness. Can you imagine how that must have felt? He was raised as a prince in Egypt, living in the palace, surrounded by wealth and power. He thought he had a purpose, a destiny. But then, in a single moment, everything changed. He made a mistake. He killed an Egyptian, and suddenly he was running for his life, fleeing into the desert. 40 years. That's how long he spent in obscurity, tending sheep, living in a foreign land, probably wondering if God had forgotten him, probably wondering if he had messed up too badly for God to ever use him again. But what Moses didn't know was that the wilderness wasn't a waste of time. It was training ground. God was preparing him, teaching him, humbling him, because when the time finally came for him to stand before Pharaoh, he wasn't just a man who had lived in the palace. He was a man who had been broken, tested, and strengthened in the desert. And then there's Joseph, the boy with the dream. He saw visions of greatness, of his brothers bowing before him, of a future filled with purpose. But instead of stepping into that promise right away, his life took a completely different turn. His own brothers betrayed him, sold him into slavery. He went from being the favored son to being a servant in a foreign land. And just when it seemed like things were getting better, just when he found favor in Potiphar's house, he was falsely accused and thrown into prison. Years passed, years of waiting, years of wondering, years of being forgotten. Can you imagine how discouraging that must have been? To know that God had placed a dream in your heart, but to feel like every step of your life was leading further and further away from it. But here's the thing, every part of Joseph's journey was preparation. In Potiphar's house, he learned leadership. In prison, he learned patience, endurance, and how to trust God when everything seemed hopeless. And when the time was right, when Joseph was ready, God took him from the prison to the palace in a single day. And then there's Job, a man who had everything, wealth, health, family, security, and in what felt like an instant, it was all taken away. He lost everything, his children, his fortune, even his health. And to make things worse, the people around him didn't make it any easier. His friends told him he must have done something wrong. His own wife told him to curse God and give up. And yet, even in the middle of his suffering, Job held on. He didn't understand why God allowed it. He didn't know how it would end. But he refused to let go of his faith. And because he endured, because he stayed faithful, God restored everything Job had lost twice over. So what if the struggle you're facing right now isn't meant to break you, but to build you? What if God is strengthening you, teaching you, shaping you for something greater? What if he's not denying you? He's developing you. Maybe you feel like you're in a waiting season, like nothing is happening, like the dream, the breakthrough, the promise is taking too long. But what if the delay isn't because God is withholding something from you, but because he's preparing you to handle it? Maybe he's working on your character. Maybe he's teaching you patience. Maybe he's removing things from your life that would have held you back. Maybe he's placing you in situations that feel uncomfortable because he knows they will make you stronger. Because here's the truth, God never wastes a season. If he's making you wait, it's for a reason. If he's closing doors, it's because they weren't the right ones. If he's allowing you to go through hardship, it's because there's something he's building in you that can only be formed through struggle. And when the time is right, when you are ready, everything will shift. The doors will open. The breakthrough will come. The pieces will fall into place. And you'll look back and realize that every delay, every disappointment, every detour was leading you exactly where you were meant to be. It's like walking through fog. You can't see the road ahead, but that doesn't mean the road isn't there. You take a step forward, but everything around you is unclear. You strain your eyes trying to see what's ahead, but all you see is mist, uncertainty, and the unknown. You wonder if you're walking in the right direction. You wonder if you should turn back. You wonder if you're even on the right path at all. And in that moment, fear creeps in. Doubt whispers. What if I'm making a mistake? What if I get lost? What if I never find my way? That's what faith feels like sometimes. Trusting God even when you don't understand, even when nothing makes sense, even when everything in you wants to stop, turn around, and take control, because let's be honest, trusting is hard when you can't see the outcome. It's hard when you pray and nothing changes. It's hard when you ask for clarity and all you get is silence. But here's the thing about fog. You may not be able to see what's ahead, but that doesn't mean the road isn't there. Just because you can't see what God is doing doesn't mean He's not working. Just because you don't hear His voice doesn't mean He's not speaking in ways you don't recognize. Just because things don't look the way you expected doesn't mean God isn't leading you exactly where you need to be. Think about Noah. God told him to build an ark, a massive boat, because a flood was coming, but at that time, there had never even been rain on the earth. Imagine how ridiculous that must have sounded, not just to Noah, but to everyone around him. Imagine how hard it must have been to keep building day after day, year after year, with no sign of rain. People probably laughed at him, mocked him, told him he was wasting his time, but Noah kept going. He kept trusting, and when the flood finally came, he realized that God had been guiding him the entire time. Or think about Abraham. God promised him that he would be the father of many nations, that his descendants would be as numerous as the stars. But Abraham and his wife Sarah were old, too old to have children. Years passed, decades, and still nothing. Can you imagine how confusing that must have been? God had given him a promise, but the reality of his situation made it seem impossible. Yet Abraham held on. He chose to believe even when it didn't make sense. And when the time was right, when it seemed least likely, Sarah gave birth to Isaac. The promise was fulfilled. And then there's Peter, walking on water. One moment he's stepping out in faith, his eyes fixed on Jesus, doing the impossible. But the next moment he notices the wind, the waves, the storm around him, and suddenly doubt takes over. Fear grips him. He starts to sink, not because the water changed, not because Jesus left him, but because he took his eyes off the one who called him out in the first place. That's what happens to us too. We start out strong, we step out in faith, but then life happens. The storm hits, the waiting gets longer, the silence gets louder, and instead of keeping our eyes on God, we focus on the uncertainty, the fear, the things we don't understand. And just like Peter, we start to sink. But here's what we forget. God never left Peter. The moment Peter called out, Jesus reached down and pulled him up. He didn't let him drown. He didn't let him fall. And He won't let you fall either. God's silence is not His absence. Just because He's quiet doesn't mean He's not there. Just because you don't see Him moving doesn't mean He's forgotten you. Sometimes He allows the silence to stretch longer than we'd like. Sometimes He lets us sit in uncertainty, not to punish us, not because He doesn't care, but because He's teaching us to trust beyond what we can see. Faith isn't about having all the answers. It's about believing even when you don't. It's about trusting that God's plan is bigger than your understanding. It's about holding on even when everything in you wants to let go. Because the truth is, the road is still there, the path is still leading somewhere. And if you keep walking, if you keep trusting, one day the fog will lift, the pieces will come together, and you'll realize that God was guiding you the entire time. Keep praying even when you don't feel like it. There will be days when you don't have the words, days when you sit in silence staring at the ceiling, wondering if God is even listening, days when prayer feels like a routine instead of a lifeline. But pray anyway, even if all you can say is, God, I don't know what to do. Even if all you can manage is a whisper, help me. Because prayer isn't just about getting answers. It's about staying connected. It's about keeping the conversation open, even in the silence, even in the doubt, even when your heart feels heavy and your faith feels weak. Prayer isn't about having the perfect words. It's about showing up. It's about surrendering again and again, even when nothing makes sense, because prayer doesn't just change situations, it changes you. It reminds you that you're not alone, that God is still with you even in the waiting. And don't just pray when you feel desperate. Make it a habit, a daily conversation. Talk to God about the small things, not just the big ones. Thank Him for what you have, even as you wait for what you don't. Tell Him your fears, your frustrations, your hopes, your dreams. The more you pray, the more you remind yourself that God is still in control, even when it doesn't feel like it. Focus on what you can do and trust God with the rest. There are some things you can control and some things you can't, but too often we get stuck stressing over the things that are out of our hands, the closed doors, the delays, the uncertainty of the future. And the more we focus on what we can't do, the more helpless we feel. But what if you shifted your focus? What if, instead of dwelling on what's not happening, you looked at what is? What if, instead of worrying about the things you can't change, you poured your energy into the things you can? Maybe you're praying for a new job, but nothing is opening up. Instead of getting discouraged, use this time to build new skills, network, or prepare yourself for when the opportunity does come. Maybe you're asking God for direction, but you feel stuck. Instead of waiting for a clear sign, take small steps. Do what's in front of you. Stay faithful in the little things and trust that God will guide you to the bigger ones. Maybe you're praying for healing in your body, in your heart, in a relationship. Instead of focusing on what hasn't changed, focus on what you can do today. Maybe that means taking care of your health, working on your mindset, or choosing to forgive even when it's hard. Faith doesn't mean sitting still, waiting for God to do everything. It means doing what you can while trusting Him to do what only He can. It means being faithful with what's in front of you, even when you don't see the full picture. It means walking forward, even if it's just one small step at a time. Remember past moments where things worked out unexpectedly. Think back to a time when you thought everything was falling apart, when you felt lost, afraid, unsure of what was next. At that moment, it felt like the end. It felt like things would never get better, but somehow they did. Somehow you made it through. Maybe you didn't get the answer you expected, but looking back, you can see how God was working all along. Maybe He closed a door you wanted to walk through, only to open a better one later. Maybe He took something away, not to hurt you, but to make room for something greater. Maybe what felt like a delay was actually protection. Sometimes we get so caught up in our current struggles that we forget all the times God has come through for us before. But He has, and He will again. Think about the prayers He's already answered, the situations that once seemed impossible but somehow worked out, the times when you thought you wouldn't make it but you did. If God was faithful then, why would He stop being faithful now? The same God who carried you through the past will carry you through this too. The same God who turned things around before is still working in ways you can't see. The same God who never left you then isn't leaving you now. So keep going, keep believing, keep holding on even when it's hard, even when it doesn't make sense, even when you feel like giving up, because just like before, one day you'll look back and see that God was with you every step of the way. If you've ever asked God, how am I supposed to do this? You're not alone. We've all had those moments, those nights when the weight feels too heavy, when the silence feels unbearable, when you just don't know what to do next. But here's the truth. You are not forgotten. You are not alone in this. And if you are looking for a sign to keep going, this is it. Drop in the comments if this spoke to you. Let me know if you've ever felt this way, because trust me, you're not the only one. Someone else might be scrolling through these comments looking for a reminder that they're not alone either. Let's encourage each other. Let's stand together in faith. And if this message reached you today, if it stirred something inside you, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Turn on the notifications so you don't miss out on more messages like this, because you never know. Maybe the next video will be exactly what you need to hear. And before you go, share this with someone, a friend, a family member, maybe even someone you barely talk to. You never know what someone is going through. You never know how much they need this message today. Maybe God is using you to bring hope to someone else.